Lacrosse community. My name's Ryan Berns. I'm the founder of the Lacrosse Leadership Institute. It's our mission to empower all those that love lacrosse, to recognize the skills you gain from the sport, to ultimately live your best life possible. Today, we're so fortunate to be joined by Sean Coe, who's coming from originally Syracuse, New York. Now he's out in San Diego and making huge strides and growing the game out there. Sean, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. For those in our community that aren't quite aware of you and your story, can you share how you got involved in lacrosse in the first place?
It's a long story, Ryan. So getting started for me with lacrosse, I grew up in Syracuse, New York, a very lacrosse-laden area, but I didn't play until I was in about 8th grade. I was a baseball guy, I was a video game guy. When I was in 8th grade, my father was incarcerated and I really didn't have anywhere to go. So I spent a lot of time with my neighbor. His name's Greg Scott, amazing, one of the best people I've ever encountered. And he handed me a lacrosse stick, right? He said, go in my backyard, get your mind off things, shoot around. And that's how the whole journey started for me. It was right there, Ryan, right in that backyard, hours a day. Wasn't involved in organized lacrosse yet. Just me getting my mind off my current life situation and just getting in the backyard and playing.
So it sounds like Greg really had a huge impact on your life and just getting you into the sport and getting you, I don't know if it's off the street, but just doing something productive.
Absolutely. And me and Greg still talk to this day. He still lives right next to my house back in Baldwinsville, New York. And after I was ready and became a little more mellowed out as a kid and an athlete and polished some of my skills, Greg also gave me the opportunity to play for an organization called FCA, where you know Cody Hamilton, and that's where me and Cody Hamilton met each other. I was playing for Greg over at FCA, and their mission is really it's faith-based, but it's all about getting kids together. And more than lacrosse is getting them to become better people and grow as a person and as an athlete. So Greg being there in my life for that was probably the single most important thing that's happened in my life, was him giving me lacrosse. Because as we've talked about down in San Diego when we were playing a few weeks ago, it's basically what I do now.
Yeah, and it's so cool that lacrosse is something that you can just embrace yourself. One of the things that I loved you talked about was being a kid's first coach, but it seems like that really stems from your experiences growing up. Can you share a little bit more about what that meant for you in terms of lacrosse and playing and now getting to a place where you get to coach at the college level?
Yeah, starting off when I was playing, I didn't really have any expectations, right? It's just another sport I picked up. It was something to do, got me out of the house, and it started to transform. I started becoming part of those old Facebook lacrosse groups. I started watching all the YouTube videos, starting to keep up with Ty Zanders and his recruiting stuff, modeling my game after certain players. And that's back then I was a goalie. So I was looking at Johnny Rodriguez, who I work with a lot now here, the Crease coach. He was a guy I really liked. Growing up a Syracuse fan, John Galloway, watching hours of John Galloway highlights, even though he went to my rival high school, right? So there was a little something right there. And just going up through high school, I identified myself. That's how I identified myself, right? I was a lacrosse player. It gave me a niche little spot to develop my personality and develop who I was as a person. And then after Greg, I went through the modified lacrosse 7th and 8th, and I got to JV where I met a guy named Doug Jackson. Doug Jackson played at Jamesville DeWitt, and then he played at Syracuse University. And he started to help me understand the word accountability, right? Because as a lacrosse coach, accountability is one of the number one things we look at. It's one of the number one things we try to build in our athletes. And there's no way to sugarcoat it. I was in the principal's office a lot in middle school while I was on JV lacrosse. And I'll tell you what, every single time I was in the principal's office, I knew the first person I was going to see wasn't going to be the principal. It would be my JV lacrosse coach walking in to ask me what happened, right? And after the principal's office, I had a second principal visit in Coach Jackson's office, right? Where we learned, what did I do? What could I have done better? How could I make a better decision? And how does this have an effect on the people around me, right? So Doug was a guy who took me from just being in lacrosse to learning that lacrosse players as an athlete on a campus have responsibility above the rest of the student body. And I had to understand that because now I'm representing something bigger than myself.
Oh, man. Right away, Sean, we're getting into some of the best parts of these conversations. It's the skills you're gaining from the sport and how they relate to the real world. And accountability is huge. You hit on respect as well. Being able to recognize those things in your life, the brand and how you conduct yourself on a daily basis is noticed by everyone around us. Can you take us back, and do you remember what your mindset was then, and if there was a moment where you just clicked and changed, or was it just Doug being there and being supportive over and over again, or how have you taken that and transitioned your life to where you are now in teaching and giving and being such an ambassador for the sport?
So I think that sets us on another road, right? So it began with Doug, but it didn't end with Doug, right? So as I was growing as an athlete and as a person, I still wasn't there yet when I got to 9th grade. So I got up to varsity lacrosse. I played for Coach Peter Fiorini, who was there for 30 plus years. And he taught me how to work for an old school coach, right? Us new school coaches, we like to focus on the player, the person, the individual. Old school coaches, we need to focus on the product on the field. So going from Doug and learning about personal accountability to going to Coach Fiorini, and now my accountability is silent, right? I don't have that give and take in a practice. I don't have that give and take in a school. It's, this is what I need you to do. This is what I need you to do it. This is how it needs to be done, right? So that kind of brought me into a next sphere of growing up, which is planning, executing, and hard work behind the scenes, right? Like I'm a big, I don't know if you know what Eric Thomas is, but I'm a big Eric Thomas guy, motivational speaker. And his biggest thing is it's what you do in the dark is what counts, not what you do in the light. It's not what you do in front of your coach, it's what you do behind closed doors. So that was a big thing with Coach Fiorini. And then still on that train, we're still getting there. You know, I started off down here. Now I'm up here personally. My skills are getting better. I get recruited to play college lacrosse at the University of Potsdam, which is in northern New York, up for Coach Rick Berkman and Coach Todd Kaiser. And that's where I think I made the biggest jump as a person with coaching, was when I got up with Rick and Coach Kaiser. And Coach Bergman is still, I would say, with Greg Scott, the two most influential coaches I've ever had in my entire life. Because what Rick did is he took what Doug Jackson did with the personal accountability, and he took what Coach Fiorini did with the on-the-field stuff, and he melded that together, right? He was a guy who played at Salisbury, won a national championship, All-American, was a grad assistant at Salisbury, then went right to Potsdam, and I believe 1993, and he's been there ever since. This is year number 28 for Rick up in Potsdam. And at first it was tough, right? Because as a freshman, you don't understand the difference between college and high school lacrosse and how you're supposed to be treated as an individual. When you're coming as a freshman, you're at the bottom of the totem pole. You go right from being a senior and being involved in everything to right to being a freshman and having to go with everything. I remember my first practice at Potsdam, Coach Berkman and the seniors were talking about a gear order for the parents, something so simple. Heard them talking, and I chimed in and said, hey, my mom would really like to get some crew necks. And the seniors looked at me with some dead look in their eyes, and Berkman looked at me and goes, what's your name? You're a freshman? You don't get to talk about the gear order yet. So that's where we started learning about that hierarchy and growing. And at that point, I was a 225-pound goalie with no athletic experience whatsoever. All right. And second practice, Berkman looks at me. I look at him. He goes, you need to lose some weight. I already got one big goalie. So lose some weight or don't play for me. And that, I think, when we talk about defining moments in lacrosse, not the pinnacle moment yet, but defining moments in lacrosse, that was my defining moment when Rick told me that, because I've never worked harder for a guy who I barely knew than those next 6 weeks, right? And it was proven wrong, all this stuff, man. He's so mean. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. Grind it out for that 6 months, show up in season at 180 and look at him and go, Coach, I'm 180. He goes, awesome, work on your skills. You're still a freshman. Right. So when we start talking about the difference between high school and college lacrosse and what to be prepared for, there's one of them, right? It's just a constant grind. And as you're a freshman, you're not expected to do much on the field. You're not expected to be a starter. You're expected to be a grinder, right? And that's a lot of the stuff that we hold up at Whittier as well. And keep moving. Over the next 2 years, me and Rick got really, really close. I had some run-ins with my dad in a negative way, and he kind of became that father figure for me while I was at Potsdam. I'd be lying if I told you I wasn't in his office crying sometimes, because I was, right? And when we talk about leadership, that's leadership in my eyes. Someone who can be really hard on you and tell you how it is, but then can turn around and take you in as a son and talk to you like a father, right? And I know I'm talking about Rick a lot, but I made that one of my very big points for this was to explain and give praise to that man for everything that he's done for me over the last 6 to 7 years.
Well, we can tell that Rick has been someone who's so loving and is able to set very high standards. I mean, the ability to be direct and say, hey, this is an expectation. 225 is not going to cut it. You got to get it down. You got to get athletic, get in shape. That's a standard. And we talk about hierarchy and we start to learn that. When you come in fresh, we sometimes have the baggage of our life that we're bringing to hey, I'm great, I'm not great, whatever it may be. But then we get on a team and we realize there's one role or one open spot and one opportunity. How can I mold myself into the best version of myself to fit that so that this chain link of a team is even stronger? And then for the leader to be able to say it in a way that we can actually hear it, because we all listen different ways and we all connect differently. But for it to be loud and clear, okay, this is what my expectation is. This is what I have to do. Sounds like he is just such an amazing guy and really cares at the end of the day, which seems like that's the ultimate definition of a leadership, someone who really cares and can push you in the right direction.
Yeah, and I come from the Berkman coaching tree, right? It all starts with Jim Berkman over at Salisbury. Rick is his nephew. So that Salisbury coaching tree pumps out some legitimate guys. Like we got guys out here like Johnny Rodriguez, who's running Cali Gold, the #1 club team out here. He's the head coach at Mater Dei, a program that had a losing record 2 years ago, but this year had 1 or 2 losses all the way without a questionable ref call. It would have been in the CIF state finals, right? Perry Kraz, who I worked with last year at Northwood, we won a CIF division title for the first time. And I think that all stems from holding that accountability we talked about and that Berkman leadership style where it's, hey, I'm going to be tough on you. I'm not going to let you lollygag through this, because to get on my field, I have an expectation for a system I'm going to run. And if you don't meet that expectation, preparedness-wise, athletic-wise, IQ-wise in lacrosse, I can't put you on the field. I don't feel comfortable doing that. And I know that might not be the most loved approach around there, but it's pretty successful. And I think that above being successful as a team, it pumps out successful individuals, not just successful athletes.
But that comes down to all aspects of life. You can't expect to go into a workplace and not be prepared and then get the results you want. An employer is not going to hire you. An employer is not going to keep you with them. You're not going to become the top person in your industry if you're not doing those little things right. And sports is an easy way to start building up those skills, building the tough skin that we talk about to be able to deal with all aspects of life. And it sounds like that's really what the focus has been in your career.
Yeah, and like I tell everyone, life's going to throw you a ton of curveballs. And if you're not ready for them, life's not going to wait for you, right? Like I basically threw a dart at a map and decided to move out here from Syracuse, New York. And I had a new boulder mountain of a problem every single week leading up to moving. And if I wasn't ready with some resilience and some problem solving skills, I wouldn't even have made it out here all the way. Because there were some times where I was sitting in my room wondering, hey, am I going to make it to California? On the way here driving, am I going to make it to California? When I left to drive here, I didn't have a place to live yet. I signed my lease in Columbus, Ohio on my way out here. So, and even since I've gotten here, I'm a teacher here. I've coached multiple things. I've started a business, and the amount of nights I've stayed up staring at a wall, wondering if I'm going to make it through this, wondering if I'm going to make my bills. Without the coaching that I've received from some very, very strong individuals, and above all of them, my mother, Jackie, I wouldn't have made it. I wouldn't be here talking to you. I wouldn't have been down in San Diego playing a few weeks ago for us to meet. It's just those skills they go far, far, far past the lacrosse field.
Yeah, and you don't even know it at the time when you're playing, when you're stepping on the field, whether it's youth, high school, college, you're playing your favorite game. You're with your boys. You're having a fantastic time. And you don't realize that competitive nature, the desire to win, you're picking up these skills that allow you to face extreme adversity and face curveball after curveball, but you have some sort of blind, I don't know if it's hope or just knowing things are going to turn out if you have that resiliency and grit. And I think that's my favorite thing that I hear you talking about, Sean.
Yeah. And going off what you said earlier about like practice and being with your boys, if anyone who's watching this has played for me before, they'll know this line. We'll have a bad practice. It'll be slow about 20 minutes in. People are already complaining. It's too hot. I'm tired. I'll blow the whistle and bring them in and just be like, hey, boys, let me just tell you something really quick. I would trade my car out there for one more practice. Not a game, not a championship, not a tournament. One more practice with my best friends. Because after leaving college, I've seen my best friends, Ryan, John, Tate, Josh. I've probably seen the majority of them about 2 or 3 times since I graduated in 2019. And I made a trip to see Ryan in Boston in June. That was amazing. I saw John when I went home into Syracuse. But those connections, no matter how strong they are and how amazing those people you're working with are, it doesn't last forever, right? Like, people grow, they grow outward. I on a whim moved to California. None of my friends could have predicted that, right? And I tell them, I would legitimately trade my car for one more hard practice with my friends, because it's the best time of the day. It's the best time of the week. It was, for me, the best time of my life. And every day, I know every coach has said that before, what we wouldn't give to go back and play with our college friends again. But coming from someone, I'm 24 years old, it hurts, right? It hurts to leave. So when we're there, I would tell players, give everything you got in practice, give 100%, because you have a certain number. And when that number hits 0, there's no second chance.
Yeah, and I can tell how emotional you are about this, Sean. I think about my practice with the guys as well. You never get that type of just unity, because when you're on that field, when you have that common goal and you're a pinnacle of athleticism, like there's nothing in comparison. And now we get men's league, which is fun, and we can be with our boys again, but it's not quite the same. People don't have this, they're not doing the same sacrifices as we were in college. And I want to ask you, Sean, you've been through a really windy road in life so far. Do you have one pinnacle moment on or off the lacrosse field, or are there a couple that really stick out to you?
So there's a couple for me. So there's one big one, but I'll get to that in a second. One of my pinnacle moments is something we've already touched on, is when Greg Scott offered me a scholarship and the opportunity to play for FCA, right? Because as we both know, club lacrosse is really expensive, and that takes a large toll on families. And my family, being a single mom household, I had a little brother growing up learning this stuff too. My mom is the hardest working woman I have ever met, and I probably ever will meet. The most amazing person in this world. And she's working 4 jobs to put soup on the table, to keep, it's in central New York, it's negative 10 degrees outside. We need to keep the heat on, got to keep the lights on. Me and my little brother Patrick are listening to the radio at 9 o'clock, because that's the pinnacle of our day. We don't have cable, right? So club lacrosse for my family wasn't really an option. And once I got the skills good enough, and it wasn't even based on the skills for Greg, it was based on who I was becoming as a person and how I was growing. And he offered me that scholarship to play FCA, and I never looked back, right? I played 3 summers with FCA. I played with Cody. I played with his little brother. His little brother was probably 7 or 8 at the time when we were playing. So he's running around the tournaments with his little Volt lacrosse stick, right? And meeting those guys who were in the same boat as me, as well as being with a bunch of kids who could afford that kind of lacrosse and did have a different lifestyle. It was eye-opening for me to know that there was other kids like me. And it was also eye-opening for the other people on my team to realize that not everyone has everything given, and for us to share those hotel rooms together, right? Because there were many trips where my family couldn't afford to come, or we had one, I can think of in particular, we had a tournament in Buffalo, New York. My mom had to work that morning. I drove up with Greg Scott, played my games. She was on her way up, and we were going to tent out that night at a campsite, but it started raining profusely. And I called mom, said, hey, I'll sleep in Greg's car. This will be fine. And a family from Connecticut took me in, let me stay in their hotel room. We played mini lacrosse in the hallway all night. And that guy will be a great friend for me for life. He ended up playing at Sacred Heart. Still a great guy. Still follow each other on Instagram, swipe up on each other's stories, stuff like that. So pinnacle number 1, getting on that lacrosse team. Overall, pinnacle of my career was scoring my first goal as an attackman, because of the amount of work that went into that. So I don't know if anyone missed it earlier. So I was a goalie my entire career. I was a bigger kid. Ended up getting the starting job my junior year. Started the first few games, had a game that wasn't great. Lost my job. The guy who came in ended up being the #1 save percentage guy the next 3 weeks of the NCAA. So never stopped working, kept it going. By the end of the season, it was pretty apparent, though, that he was a much better goalie than me. Shout him out. His name is Zach Sheridan, still one of my great friends to this day as well. And so I decided that I played box lacrosse my whole life growing up as well, just because I was a lacrosse rat. There was lacrosse going on in Syracuse. I was there. So I said, hey, Coach Berkman, let me play a tag. He said, no. I said, no, like, you don't understand. Like, I'm playing a tag. No. Okay, like, when I come back this fall and I don't have my goalie equipment, I only have my attack equipment, don't say I didn't warn you. And he said, I will cut you. No matter how much I love you, I will cut you if you're not good enough. I looked him down in the eye. I said, I dare you to cut me. And for that 3 months, I completely changed every athletic thing that I did, from goalie training to attackman training, right? Busted my butt all summer, came back, was the 3rd string lefty attackman. Beginning of the fall, grounded out the fall, I started the fall ball games. Scored 2 goals, scored a few goals in the alumni game, and I was the starting attackman, right? So went all through fall, kept working. It was like, hey, I got this. First 3 games as lefty attackman, 0 goals on 6 shots. The doubts are starting to creep into your head. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe this was a big mistake. Maybe it's too big of a jump. Then we're playing Hartwick. 5 minutes into the game, Josh Hewitt, All-American, passes me the ball. I turn around, don't even look where I'm shooting, just shoot it as hard as I can, goes in, stick side high, right? Turn around, all of a sudden I scream my teammates, floodgates open, 2 more goals that game, hat trick the next game, 2 goals the next game, and I was on a roll. So I think that blind shot of power and turning and letting my arms loose, that was my pinnacle moment, because I finally, for the first time in my life, got to see the ball drop on the other side of the goal. And that feeling was so amazing and so euphoric that, like, I can tell you every half a second for that entire minute. I can tell you where the ball went. I can tell you who passed the ball to who to get it to me. I can tell you who the first person was to come hug me. I can tell you looking up, and my father hasn't been there around for lacrosse for a lot of my life, and that was the first actual lacrosse game my dad's ever been to. And to turn up and see him, never seen a lacrosse game, doesn't know what's going on, the joy in his eyes, seeing me be happy and turn around with his hands up like this, and I heard him mouth, "That's my son." That's got to be my pinnacle moment in lacrosse overall.
Oh, that is epic. There's so much with that, Sean, just in terms of like getting to the pinnacle spot you can get as a goalie, realizing, hey, you know what? There's someone who is better. He's going to take that spot. Where's another spot for me? Finding that time, putting in the work, time, showing up, not seeing the results. Like you said, the mental trash that we tell ourselves, getting through that, and then just floodgates opening. Oh my gosh, that's unbelievable. And what a story to be able to tell your kids and everything. And I think that leads into what are you up to now? Share a little bit about all the programs you're doing, coaching, and what you're up to.
So it's a mouthful. All right. So right now, currently, I am the head assistant and defensive coordinator at Whittier College in East Los Angeles. I am helping a transition to help transition a high school program, Northwood, where I coached last year, from between an old head coach and a new head coach. His name's Chad Anderson, great guy. He actually played for me at Potsdam when I was coaching, and now he's coaching the high school that I coached at last year, which is an awesome story. And we talked a lot about SoCal Grizzlies. That's my club team that I'm the president of, and I'm the head coach that I started, along a lot of those bases that we talked about earlier. Which one do you want to talk about first?
I really like the idea of the Grizzlies, so I want to make sure we hit on that one.
Okay, so backstory on Grizzlies was I was coaching at Northwood High School last year, and we were getting towards the end of the season, and I'm noticing kids aren't getting excited about summer ball. And I don't know if you remember, but at the end of the year, people are kind of sick of school ball. They're ready to go play summer ball. And I'm like, it's weird. I go, hey, where are you guys playing summer ball this year? Oh, coach, we're not playing summer ball. We can't afford it around here. Like, what do you mean you can't afford it around here? He goes, oh, like, to play summer ball, it's going to be about $3,000. And looking back at what I went through to get on a club lacrosse team and understand that I would never have ever been able to afford that money, and I would have never gotten recruited without it, I decided to run some numbers real quick and see what I could do, and figured out that I can start a club team that gets kids out playing, and I could get some sick gear, for $1,500 basically. And so I took my good friend who was my defensive coordinator, Ryan Duffy, over at Potsdam. He's actually down at Camp Pendleton now in the military. He gave me a $2,500 loan to order uniforms, balls, pay for field time. And I got these kids played 4 tournaments with 8 practices, jersey, penny shorts, that all of them paid $750. So
Woo!
yeah, so basically the idea behind Grizzlies is getting kids out to play, getting kids to these summer showcase tournaments, keeping their sticks in their hands for as cheap as humanly possible, scraping by, right? And I was worried. I was really nervous about how it was going to work out. I was really nervous about putting it on the field, right? Because I'm not doing tryouts. I'm not formulating a team to win. Exactly. I'm formulating a team to play. So when we got into our first local tournaments, we were playing teams like SoCal Pride LC, which John Rodriguez runs, and SoCal Bulls, and we're losing 25-0, 24-1, 18-0, and I'm getting ready to give my first talk after the first tournament, and I go to talk to apologize to these kids about what happened, and all of a sudden I hear, "Thank you, coach. That was so much fun. I can't believe what that kid did against us earlier. I'm going to go back home my backyard and try that 100 times until I can do it. It's crazy how fast these guys move. We got to move faster. Coach, can we do a drill to work on this play? Can we do a defensive drill to come up with something to do that?" And I got to give the credit to the kids, man. I don't know if I'm doing that, if I'm in that spot. I hate losing. I'm a real competitive guy. So the kids were absolutely amazing this summer. And by the end of the summer, we went from 0-3 with, I think, 3 goals, 4, and 65 allowed in the first tournament. We went to the finals of our last tournament. We
Let's go.
We went 4-2 and lost by 2 in the finals of our 4th tournament on a 2 months of work. And when people asked me what the difference was, I said, these kids don't pick up their sticks in the summer. This is how good these kids could be if they played all summer. A lot of people talk about Irvine lacrosse and it being not as high of a level as some of the other surrounding areas in California, and they're right. But it's because these kids don't play in the summer. These kids don't have summer programs. These kids haven't had fall programs. They pick up the stick in January and put it down in May, right? And watching those kids with a smile on their face after going 0-5 to going 4-2, it made every hour of work that I put into Grizzlies over that 6 months worth it for me, right? Because that's what it's all about. I've always wanted to be Greg Scott. I've always wanted to be Doug Jackson. I've wanted to be Pete Fiorini. I've wanted to be Rick Berkman. And that was one of the first times that I really felt like I had made a difference in a kid's life. And that was a really, really, really important moment for me.
Oh, Sean, that's unbelievable. I think that's why I do lacrosse. That's why I do this and everything. I found so much value in playing, and I feel like it's why I am who I am today. Same thing for you. And we want to provide it to these kids, these families, anyone, just so that they get that same opportunity. And you're actually executing on it, which is unbelievable. And I can see why it's so moving. And to hear the kids just being like you, I think they're showing their resiliency. You're just sharing with them your life, and they're picking that up as well. That's why I know you're really competitive, but they go, okay, well, let's move on. Let's see the positive in these situations. And that's the coolest thing as well. We never know what's going on. Like, we don't know what we don't know. We don't know what's going through these kids' minds, what perspective they're bringing. But when they start sharing with us and communicating with us, all of a sudden there's just so much brightness, and it's always happy. And I think it's amazing that you're experiencing that and able to share it with us, because it's so powerful. I know our time's wrapping up here. Are there any last thoughts you have with lacrosse or leadership, or anything you'd like to share with our community?
So what I really wanted to talk about was the question you asked, like, what can you do to make it to the next level? All right. Okay. So I had a talk with Coach Fox, who's the head coach at Whittier, and some of the other grad assistants. We have Josh Kelly, Cooper Champagne, Riley Filler, and we took a different approach to this. All right. So anyone can say, hit the wall, be better at one thing than everyone else, stand out in film, work hard, work out, but you probably get that 90% of the time on the program, right? So yeah. What we thought to bring something different, a lot of things people don't really talk about a lot, is the best thing that youth can do to play at the next level is be physically, mentally, and emotionally prepared to grow, and emotionally prepared to learn at the next level. And what I mean by that is that we touched on earlier, high school and college lacrosse are vastly different speed-wise, IQ-wise, and physicality-wise. I don't know how many freshmen you've seen come in and get hurt the first few weeks because they're not ready to take a college hit, or get reamed out because they're not ready to run a college system. And what we noticed is that we had a scrimmage against Concordia University on Saturday, and we got a lot of freshmen in, and we noticed that every freshman that did well in that scrimmage was calling us every day, asking what they could do better. They were watching film on their own. They were coming into the office, watching film with us. They were hitting lifts. Not only were they hitting lifts, they were hitting their additional lifts. They were going to our trainer, Savannah, who's also amazing. Going to our trainer, Savannah, after practice, before practice, getting heat, getting rolled out, taking care of their bodies and staying healthy, asking questions, all that kind of stuff. So if I could pick one thing that the youth could do is be physically, mentally, and emotionally ready for that transition, because no matter how good you are, you're going to show up on that campus and you're going to be on the bottom of the totem pole.
For me, what's coming up is just being vulnerable, being willing to accept and be humble that you're not the best. We're here to learn. We're here to play at the highest level possible for us. So embrace the system that's there, embrace the coaches, the staff, everyone that's there. And if you're willing to say, you know what, I want to learn, I want to grow, what can I do every single day? Those are those kids that are ultimately going to actually reach the highest parts of their lives.
Yeah, and that's why we're there, right? That's why we're paid. We're not just paid to get out there for 2 hours a day and yell at you, right? I like to tell my kids, I'm open 24/7, 365. Give me a call, shoot me a text, send me an email. You need something, ask me. You have a question about something, ask me, right? And I think that the lack of freshmen that understand that, it creates a big divide between them and the upperclassmen, because it's a big gap until they realize it in the season. So if a freshman were to come in knowing those things and being ready to use those resources, I think they'd have a lot better chance of getting into those fall ball scrimmages with the ones. And those kids, like I have a kid, Robbie Vanderkloot, who came to me as a offensive midi from Northern California. Here's the story. I'm the defensive coordinator, right? So if I have him, it means he's a D midi now. And that's never a fun thing to tell a kid, that you're no longer playing offense. Now you're playing D midi. And at first, admittedly, Robbie was a little upset. Robbie took a day or two to get used to the role, but every day since that, Robbie Vanderkloot has gotten better every day. He has gotten better at asking questions every day. He has become more physical. He's spending time in the locker room with us. He's spending time watching film. He's coming over to me during practice 5 or 6 times. If he's not coming to me, he's coming to one of the grad assistants. And he was a starter. He started for me at D-Midi at a high-level Division III program this past Saturday because of the work he put in, not because of the player he showed up as. And this is only NCAA, it's only 15 practices. He got playing time, and he earned my respect, not as the player he came in as, but as what he showed me over the past month. And I think that story like Robbie is a good kind of judgment for all those kids out there who are wondering, like, what do I do? Where do I go? Be like Robbie. You're like Robbie, man. Your coach is going to have a really, really, really hard time not getting you on the field.
Absolutely, because the trust is there, and there's, you know what the character is. You know the person they're becoming. Just like Greg Scott for you, he knew the person you were becoming, and that's why you got the scholarship, Sean. And we know who you're becoming as well. You've got so much energy, so much passion. You want to do it for the kids and the right reasons. Thank you so much for being a part of this conversation today. I'm excited to see what you continue to do and to make sure that we stay connected moving forward.
Absolutely, man. Hey, stay connected, though. I'm really interested in what you're doing. I love what you're doing for the community, and this has been so awesome for me to be able to come on here, and I can't thank you enough for the opportunity.
Oh, awesome, Sean. Thank you.